The sequel trilogy really needed a storyline before they made these movies. They rushed into production, and they should have planned it out beforehand. At least now they did it with the High Republic. I think the High Republic has a great storyline and with fleshed out characters, and it feels like the writers really know what they're doing with the books. So better late than never. The High Republic is a prequel series to the original nine Skywalker films that take place 250 years before The Phantom Menace. It was a publishing initiative called Project Luminous that regrouped several different high caliber authors like Charles Soule, Claudia Gray, George Mann, Kevin Scott, and Justina Erlin. The story is divided in three phases. Phase 1 is called Light of the Jedi, Phase 2 is entitled Quest of the Jedi, and Phase 3 is named Trials of the Jedi. The Jedi are at their height of their powers, and there are many new characters. It's what every Star Wars fans have been waiting for. I'll start off with Phase 1, and then I'm going to name every phase, and I'm going to talk about each book in every phase, and also each character. So, without further ado, here we go. Phase 1. The story of Phase 1 focuses on a completely new Jedi Order, and it is the Golden Age. The Jedi must face a new threat that are called the Nihil, space Vikings that want to create chaos in the galaxy. It is also a time of peace and for the Republic, and the Order worked separately from the Republic. The major temple was on Coruscant, but other temples were all around the galaxy on every major Republic planet. Adult books. The first book is entitled Light of the Jedi. This is where the High Republic starts. The storyline. The novel starts in a time of galactic peace as the Republic prepare to launch Starlight Beacon, a massive space station that will help communicate between the worlds. The Nihil cause a catastrophic event known as the Great Disaster, and the Jedi Order must race against time to stop the Nihil and march in row from causing chaos across the galaxy. One of the best Star Wars books I have ever read. The Light of the Jedi is a book that draws you in the High Republic superbly. It is an incredibly well-written novel by Charles Soule and thoroughly enjoyable. The action is spellbinding, and the book has a tough job of introducing us to a bunch of different and new characters, and it really does a job super well. Light of the Jedi is the perfect novel to get you interested in Star Wars books, or if you just want to read a great book and be entertained. I would give this book 9.5 out of 10. It's a really strong start. I think it's a fantastic book all around. Next up, we have The Rising Storm. The story. The Nihil decide to attack a Republic fair, and the safety of everyone there is threatened, making the job incredibly hard for the Jedi to stop them. The sequel to Light of the Jedi, written by Kevin Scott, I think is also a really great read. It continues the momentum of the first novel. It's incredibly engaging and leaves you on an incredible cliffhanger. I mean, the ending is really great as well. The characters, the storyline. I think The Rising Storm is a really great sequel to the original novel, and yeah, it's great stuff. Great characters, great writing. Kevin Scott really wrote damn good sequel. I would give this sequel 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a really enjoyable read. The third book is The Fallen Star. Storyline. The Jedi must deal with the widespread attack and the tragedy on the Republic Fair, and March in Row prepares a deadly attack on the Order. Claudia Gray, in my opinion, is my favorite Star Wars writer, and whenever she writes something, it feels like you're in the movie. She describes the scene so well. She knows Star Wars. She loves. You can tell that she loves Star Wars. She's my favorite Star Wars author by far. She describes character and the situation so well, and like I mentioned, and knows the world. She's an incredibly gifted writer, and I loved the ending of Phase One. This book, The Fallen Star, is action packed from the very first chapter and doesn't stop. It's a great ending to the first phase, and while I was a bit disappointed to hear that like Phase Two jumps backwards in time, I think overall it was a good decision by the writers to do like a prequel to Phase One before jumping into to Phase Three, which is a sequel to the first trilogy of books. So yeah, I would give The Fallen Star 9.5 out of 10. I think it's an incredible achievement. The entire first trilogy, I think, is a great new era for Star Wars fans that they can all enjoy and read. And there's a lot of new characters. Maybe it's a little difficult for some people to get into because there's just so many new characters, and I get that. But the Jedi Order is vast. It's so big that you kind of need all these new characters. Now I'm gonna talk about the young adult books. I'm gonna start with Into the Dark. I'm gonna read like this the small synopsis first, and then give my thoughts. Padawan Red Silas loves adventure, but unfortunately doesn't get to experience it. But Red's master takes a job on Starlight Beacon, and Padawan Silas has no choice but to go along with her. But trouble on the ship leaves him and others stranded. I thought this book was a good read in my opinion. It's written by Claudia Gray, which is also a great plus. I think, like I said, Claudia Gray is the best Star Wars writer. I didn't connect as much for these characters as the main cast in the adult books, but it's still a fun read and a quick one as well. So, and it didn't really grab me as much as the other ones, but it's still a really fun young adult book, and it's easy to read. So I would give this book like an 8 out of 10. Now I'm going to talk about Out of the Shadows. Silva Yarrow is on a streak for bad luck. She is trying to hold her family cargo business together, but when the Nihil attack, Yarrow is in danger of losing all she has left of her mother. She heads for Coruscant for help, but is sidetracked when she arrives in the middle of a conflict of two of the Republic's most powerful families over a patch of space on the frontier. This is the last place that Yarrow wants to be, but a promise of a big payload does give her an interest in the fight. In my opinion, I really enjoyed the Out of the Shadows as well. I think it's a fun and enjoyable book. I prefer when the story moves the plot forward more in the adult books, but here I thought the story was engaging, the characters were interesting, and I think that's just Tina Ireland really writes well for Star Wars as well. So I'd give this book also an 8 out of 10. I think it's an enjoyable book overall. Like, yeah, none of the young adult books are must read in my opinion. Recommend the adult novels. But if you want to read them all, then it's just reading the young adults. But I would suggest reading the adult book first. So next up, we have A Midnight Horizon. After a series of staggering losses, the Republic seems to finally have the villainous Nihil Marauders on the run, and it looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Until word comes of a suspected Nihil attack on the industrial cosmopolitan world of Corellia, right in the galactic core. Sent to investigate are Jedi Masters Comac Vetus and Cantum Sai, along with Padawans Reed Silas and Ram Jamaran, all fighting their own private battles after months of unrelenting danger. This is probably one of my least favorite High Republic books, and it's got nothing to do with the story. I think the story is fine. It's just the way it was written. It didn't really feel like Star Wars to me. The writer often used terms that really was like head scratching at times, and it didn't pull me in as a Star Wars story, and that's kind of unfortunate. I didn't feel like Daniel Jose Alder did a good job writing this book. Well, I'd give this book like a 5 out of 10. It's not terrible, but just like it's nothing I would ever read, probably. The characters of Phase 1. Elzerman. Human male and close friend to Eva Chris, Elzerman was a very powerful Jedi in the Order. He was a controversial Jedi because of the manner he would use the Force. As a young Jedi, Elzerman had the tendency to break the rules. Avar Kriss. Noble and self-sacrificing, Avar was an inspiration to many Jedi. She assisted on Starlight Beacon and was involved in the tragedy known as the hyperspace disaster when the Legacy run split apart in hyperspace. Chris was later given a command of Starlight Beacon after it became fully operational. She was taken into the Jedi Order as a child. Loden Greatstone. A wise and powerful Jedi, Loden Greatstorm was highly respected and considered to be an extremely wise teacher. He was also said to be very funny. He had a yellow lightsaber as a weapon. I think Elzerman and Loden Greatstorm are my favorite new Jedi. If I had to pick, I think these two are amazingly well-written characters. Chancellor Lina So. So was a female politician who rose to power prior to the galactic disaster. She established several outreach programs, including Starlight Beacon, which is one of the most important stations in the entire galaxy. Marchin Rowe, the Eye of the Nihil. He grew up on the Gaze Electric, his family's ship, the son of Asgar Rowe and his grandmother Shelia. The family developed a group known as the Nihil. While he was still an adolescent, Marchin Rowe's father was killed and murdered by one of Nihil's leaders. Rowe then became the leader of the Nihil in his father's place, and now he's hell-bent on destroying the Jedi Order and creating chaos all over the galaxy. Buryaga. A male Wookiee Jedi Knight, Buryaga became Padawan of Master Nib Asek. Buryaga disliked social gatherings because most people didn't understand or speak his language. His weapon is a blue crossguard lightsaber. The Nameless. Eaters of the Force, the Nameless are enemies of the Jedi. They preyed on the living Force, making them the ideal predators of the Jedi Order. Marchin Rowe possesses the means to control the Nameless creatures and use them in order to attack the Jedi Order. I think the Nameless are terrific creatures that we haven't seen in Star Wars before. I think the entire concept of the Nihil and the Nameless working together is very interesting. It's something new that we haven't seen in Star Wars, and I'm really looking forward to know more about them. Next up, we got Yoda. We all know him, and of course, we need a recognizable face in this series. While I think Yoda is kind of used sparingly, especially in the first phase, he still had his purpose in the saga. He's younger and still one of the greatest Jedi in the Order. So these are mostly the main characters of Phase 1. Of course, I didn't name everybody because that would be an hour-long video. But these are mostly the main characters that we follow in the Jedi Order. Those are my thoughts on Phase 1. Phase 1, I think, is an absolute hit. It's terrific. It's what we kind of needed out of the movies, in my opinion. But at least we got some great books out of the High Republic. And yeah, those are my thoughts on Phase 1. We're going to jump to Phase 2, which takes place on 150 years before Phase 1. So it goes even back in time even further. So here is the sort of introduction to Phase 2. It is a time of great exploration. This phase is set 150 years before Phase 1. On the off-planet Dalna, a new threat is about to rise, the Path of the Open Hand. The Path of the Open Hand was an extremist cult that believed no one should use or manipulate the Force. They believed that in doing so would disrupt the balance of the universe. Prospectors and pirates roam the galaxy, and the worlds of Iram and Arono are locked in a forever war. I'll start off with the characters this time around, and then I'll head to the books. Alicia Zavaron, also known as the Mother, the spiritual leader of the Path of the Open Hand, and she came to the planet of Dalna as a refugee and rose quickly to power in the sacred cult due to her Force vision. She quickly replaced the leader Reth Ploth and began her plot to overthrow the Jedi Order. Gela. She was a human Jedi who wielded two purple lightsabers. She was indispensable in the compromise of the peace treaty between the planets Aram and Erono. She developed a close relationship with Axel Greylark. Axel Greylark, a human male who was known as a chaos to the leader of the Open Hand. He was sent by his own mother to represent the Republic's best interest in the conflict of the Forever War. However, unknown to his mother, Axel is part of the conspiracy to prolong the war orchestrated by the Path of the Open Hand, since Axel blamed the Jedi for his father's death. I'm gonna now talk about every novel. I'm gonna start with Path of Deceit. I think Path of Deceit is a strong introduction to the start of Phase 2. Introduces interesting villains and new characters. It's sometimes a bit hard to grasp and remember everybody who is new. So you've already been introduced to so much in the High Republic in Phase 1, but it's a solid start to Phase 2 and explores the world of the High Republic even further. I would give this Path of Deceit 8 out of 10. I think it's a solid read. It's a great introduction. Now let's jump into Convergence. This book was a bit hard to get into because I feel like the writing was not up to par with other previous High Republic books. I liked some of the characters and the plot that was unfolding. I like, let's say, Midnight Horizon. I didn't think the story was really the main problem of this book. It felt to me like the story was actually poorly written. It didn't feel like there was no idea in this novel. It just felt like very sloppily written. I don't know much about the writer Zoraida Cordova, but I unfortunately didn't think that she was the right person to write this book. It's got some slow scenes and got some interesting characters and situations. So I'm not gonna be too hard on it, but it is my least favorite of the adult novels. So I would give this book 5.5 out of 10. I think it's all just okay. Could have been better if maybe somebody else had written it, like Claudia Gray for some example, because the story was complicated and I didn't think that Cordova did a good job of explaining the story. So yeah, but I thought that the sequel, Cataclysm, was much better. Lydia Kang writes the sequel to Conversion in spectacular fashion. The storyline is incredibly intriguing and it spans multiple planets and follows numerous characters. The characters Axel and Gela are incredibly exciting and they are fresh personalities in the Star Wars universe. Their relationship also felt like Rey and Kylo Ren, which is a big plus to me in this book, and they are awesome together. The conflict of the Forever War is fascinating and expands the universe even further. I really loved Cataclysm. I think it's one of my favorite High Republic books. I love these characters. I love the storyline. Lydia Kang, I think, wrote this book really well. So I'd give this book a 9 out of 10. I think it's a really solid read. Next up, there's also an audio drama entitled The Battle of Jeddah. I'd like to touch on that before I go into Path of Vengeance, because it is part of Phase 2. The entire book is pretty much like a battle. It's kind of well done. It's a story. The story is fast paced and it's easy to read since it's an audio drama. I read it in 2 days, and yeah, I really enjoyed the Battle of Jeddah as well. So, Path of Vengeance. This book, in my opinion, is a fascinating conclusion to the Phase 2 of the High Republic. The characters and also the villains are further developed, and the journey on Planet X is exhilarating. This novel is breathless and in its execution and really well written. You care about the characters involved, Yana and Marta, who are at the crossroads and must face their own destiny, which is intertwined with the galaxy itself. Yeah, Path of Vengeance I thought was a solid conclusion to Phase 2, and it made me excited to read Phase 3. Phase 3 mostly has the same characters of Phase 1, so I'm not going to bother going into the characters more than I already did. I'm just going to start with the Eye of Darkness. I think the Eye of Darkness is an excellent start to Phase 3. It follows the storyline of the characters introduced in Phase 1, like I mentioned. After the destruction of Starlight Beacon, the Jedi are still dealing with the threat of the Nihil. We established an impenetrable barrier called the Stormwall around part of the Outer Rim. The Jedi now they need to find a way to stop the Nihil. They've caused so much destruction, and now they need to, and they need a win. They really need a win. Written by George Mann, this book is amazing. It starts off right where the Fallen Star ends, and it doesn't stop. And actually, it starts like a year after the Fallen Star ends, and like it doesn't stop. It's just a really fast-paced book. There's a lot of action. The characters continue to be developed, well developed and interesting. I thought that George Mann wrote a really good book, in my opinion. The Eye of Darkness continues the era of the High Republic in spectacular fashion. So yeah, I think you really need to jump into the High Republic if you're a fan of Star Wars, and if you want to delve into the books more. You haven't read anything, I would consider just reading Phase 1, 2, and 3. And they're incredible books. They're fantastic reads, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of the High Republic books yet. If this video makes you interested in reading any of them, I highly recommend picking one up. I recommend starting at the beginning, Light of the Jedi. You could maybe start with Phase 2 as well, since it's the prequel. You can I think that would be alright, like starting with Path of Deceit. But I'd recommend starting with the Jedi, because it starts off with such a bang, and you get invested immediately in these characters. So, well, yeah, those are my thoughts on the High Republic. Let me know what you think about the books down in the comments below. See you next time.